Talking about this confusion about whether we're actually losing officers to retirement or adding officers. As you approach the whole situation with the IMPD, how do we have more officers on the streets?
Right. We have added a number of officers to the street. When I first came into office, 8 years ago, promised 200 more police officers. We had 200 more police officers. It took, we hired them over 4 years because we were trained. That was as fast as we could train them back then. One of the things we're doing with the new public safety revenues that we have, that were passed by the council on September 16th, is we are beefing up the size of our training academy considerably. We're swearing in a class right now of 87 actually. We're going to have 100 in the next class, which we're going to swear in December. We are significant. We're training officers faster than we have ever trained them in the history of this city. We do have a fair amount of attrition this year because of a state retirement incentive plan called the DROP plan. It encourages police officers and firefighters to retire early. We have that plan. We have to deal with the consequences of that. And we're going to lose over 70 officers by the end of this year. But by the end of next year, we will have replaced all those officers. The relatively few officers that we are down from our allowable limit right now, and the 100 new officers that we will add as a result of the new public safety revenues. And we will be at full strength by the end of 2008. And I think this is really important to understand. We have over 200, I would say over 200, conservatively I'd say 200 officers that are going to be added to the streets. These are not new officers in our allowable limits, but these are going from supervisory jobs to street patrol as a result of the police merger. In other words, as a result of merging the sheriff's department and the police department, we're going to have 200 more officers who were formerly in supervisory positions are now going to be patrolling our streets. And again, that's by the end of 2008. So it's a remarkable increase in officers. We're already significantly up from where we were, but we're going to be up much higher by the end of 2008.
Mr. Ballard?
I'm sorry, I just don't think that's credible. I just don't think that's credible at all. A while back we were told we were 9 officers short when we have dozens, if not over 100 beats uncovered on a daily basis. The local journalist here has run the numbers. He said out of the next 300 officers that will be trained, and in about that same time we're going to lose 290 officers. We are not building up the force at the rate we are. I would certainly like to bring in lateral transfers from other places. We need to certainly tighten up the screening process. It takes so long just to get somebody, just to get a person into the academy. It's about 8 or 9 months. We can send a Marine down Racial boot camp in 2 weeks. Why does it take so long to get somebody into the academy? Why can't we use lateral transfers? We can do all that stuff. But frankly, the numbers just aren't credible. There are not going to be 100 more officers on the street anytime soon. That's just the way it is. And we will just have to disagree on those numbers, because I know people going into the academy, and I talk to all the cops all the time. I got a unanimous FOP endorsement. I've got the best sources in the world telling me what's really happening in the police department. To me, that's just not credible.
There are many more questions here, but we're getting close to the end of our time. So let me ask this question. What do you feel is the most important issue for the city in 2008, and what would be your first initiative in the new year?
Well, that's a multifaceted question also. People always ask me my favorite, my best, and I just don't think in terms like that, frankly. But I think we have multifaceted issues that are causing people to leave the county, mainly taxes and crime. And if we cannot keep people in this county, then we're going to be in trouble. We are going to have very rich and very poor. Any historian will tell you that's a recipe for social unrest. The middle class that should be vibrant in this city is going away. And unless we get taxes and crime under control, that's going to be the biggest issue that we have in the future. When you look out 10 to 20 years in this city, what do you see? What do you see? Some people see a vibrant, thriving city. But what I see is no middle class. You'll see it out in Brownsburg. You'll see them up in Carmel. You'll see them now moving out to Greenfield. But I'm afraid that the middle class in this city is moving out because of the situation that we have going on right now, primarily taxes and crime.
Mr. Mayor?
Boy, I have a very different future of Indianapolis. I see a city that is confident in its ability to solve the challenges that it has, but also recognizing that we have unlimited potential. Look at what we're accomplishing in this city. Look at our extraordinary downtown with people moving into downtown, people enjoying our downtown. We have neighborhoods that are being turned around, neighborhoods that have suffered neglect and lack of investment for years and are now seeing investment like they've never seen before. Our Great Indy Neighborhoods program providing that kind of hope for many of those neighborhoods. We are engaged in the war against crime. We've made some tough decisions. I got to tell you, I made some tough and very frankly, probably not so popular decisions because I believe that winning the battle against crime was the single most important thing we had to do. And you can't do it on the cheap. You can't lay police officers off and win the war against crime. You can't reduce the number of jail beds in your city and win the war against crime. You can't cut back the resources of your crime lab and have DNA backlogs of 2 or 3 years and win the war against crime. You can't cut back on the number of prosecutors and win the war against crime. What we did is we invested in that foundation to create a situation where we could win the war against crime. So what we see today is we see the homicide rate for 2007 is down 25% from 2006. We see progress. We see many other categories of crime that are down this year. We see some categories of crime that are up this year. But now we have the resources to fight back. Now we can look at each of those areas and those neighborhoods that are suffering and we can fight back because we now have the resources to be able to do it, to put more officers on the street, to pay more overtime, to have more judges, to keep those jail beds and add even more, to look for more ways to keep the bad guys off the street, and also to help keep young people away from a life of crime by focusing additional resources on crime prevention and early intervention. So property taxes, number one issue in our city. It's an acute problem. This is one of those problems that, the pain that people feel over this, the fear of losing their homes, the fear of not being able to send their children to college, the fear of having to come out of retirement or never being able to retire. We have got to deal with this problem. It's an acute problem. It's like a disease that attacks your body and will kill you if you do not root it out quickly. But for the longer problem, just like we've challenged in the city over the last 4 decades, once we have solved that problem, then we have to focus on those things that I mentioned earlier. Continuing this escalated war against crime, and finally winning that war, helping our kids graduate and go on to college, revitalizing our neighborhoods, bringing even more good-paying jobs to our city, and finally greening our city. So I think the future is a bright one for the city of Indianapolis, and I'm not going to I'm never going to join with those who throw up their hands and say our future is bleak. I think we have a very, very bright future in this city.
Well, on behalf of the Fletcher Place Neighborhood Association and the Bates-Hendricks Neighborhood Association,